All right, so the spark, the story. Who is Terry outside of the titles? What shaped you growing up in Austin?
Okay. Those are two questions. Who's Terry outside of the title? Then what shaped me? Well, I am just a little girl at heart. That's just, I love big. And I see a lot of beauty in the world. And so to the core, I'm just a little girl. I'm also a mother, a wife, and somebody that really just genuinely, truly loves Black people and wants to see good for all of us and sees the gold in us, sees the queen and king in us. And so that's who I am to the, outside the title.
To the core.
To the core. And what shaped me?
Yeah, what shaped you growing up in this great city?
Also, I was born and raised in Austin, Texas. But I'm a first gen. My mom and my dad are from Trinidad and Tobago. So I'm a country Caribbean is what I call myself.
A country Caribbean. Okay.
Yeah. And I love it. I love being from both worlds.
Oh, you're good. You're good. Yeah. We live. It's all right.
Are we live? Hey.
Oh, yeah. I mean, not a lot like that, but for the course, yeah, guests are coming out.
But yeah,
country Caribbean.
Yeah, I'm a country Caribbean, and so I've got to see the best of both worlds all my life. Being from here, and
did you travel back home?
Not often in my early days, but toward my late teens and beyond, yes. But I used to live in, my mom dropped me back off with my grandmother when I was 1 or 2, and I stayed till I was 7. And I came back to Austin.
Oh, you had a good amount of time.
She left and came back to Austin. I kind of grew too. So, I mean, long story short, I've always been able to see both, worlds. Yeah. And, for Austin, we've always had a Black ecosystem. It was smaller, certainly, than Trinidad's because that's really all that it's made up of over there, Black and brown people. Ooh. But you could still see back on the east side of Austin that we had our own restaurants. We had our own, ecosystem, stores and mechanic shops and, just being able to rely on your neighbor for this or that. So I got to see that at the very tipping end, and so did you. You know what I'm saying? With East Austin.
It's crazy you say that because for the longest I used to say that growing up I didn't really have any type of role models or inspiration to get into business. But a couple of days ago, my memory was jogged when I was in 7th grade. I went to Keep. Mm-hmm. And we lived on top of Ridgeway Drive, which is up the hill from Booker T. So instead of catching the bus back home, my Hattie lived on 12th Street, and I forget the middle street name, but it's middle street that almost almost right where the Grand Lodge is. And so I would go to my Aunt Hattie's house, and I remember my mom would tell me these stories of how my Aunt Hattie and her husband owned half of 12th Street. And so while I never got to see the entrepreneur, my mom would often talk about this era of, because, I grew up in the buildings where, we have a lot of abandoned buildings. You could tell these used to be popping places, but at this time, nothing was going on there.
Yeah.
And my mom would tell me about this time where East Austin was just lit up, was just, brighting with, as you say, this Black ecosystem.
It's true.
And you called it.
It's true. No, and what really tapped me in on knowing Black history in a different light was the book that I wrote around the 26 Black leaders, but I didn't even know about the history. And so then how rich Austin used to be. There was a Black men's club that flew planes across the sky, and owned planes. That level.
I didn't know that.
In Austin, Texas, and not too far ago, maybe 1 or 2 generations from us. So the abandonment, the gentrification happened so fast.
See, it's interesting
that we didn't get to see it, but there was a time where Black Austin looked very different. There was a time where in the 70s there was a white skating ring that tried to come to East Austin and say that they were coming to East Austin, and Black people couldn't go to it. And do you know, they came, and 2 months later they got shut down because the Black people around the city rallied and said every organization will stand and march around the clock, and we will just be on an organized time. When the AKAs, dropped out, then the NAACP, popped back in, and they were protesting them around this skating rink so much that they closed it down in 2 months. And you're talking about people that are still living, actually, that could tell those stories, and they were in their they were 17 or 16, or whatever. I can tell the story about that skating ring. But the fact that was a public, and they got shut down 2 months later because we rallied as a people to say, no, you're not going to come to our side of town and tell us we can't attend. Yeah. You're shut down, and so that level of organization and unity really speaks to who we are as a body. They were marching around the clock. Every organization had a time slot, and they, and everyone filled it, and they got it done. That's not new, to who we are as a people. We are very much tribal and know how to take care of each other when that is, the core and, modeled and becomes a principle and value. But when you are disenfranchised as a people, you forget and you buy into systems that are set to kind of try to put us against each other and oppress us, right? And so, that goes from in our enslaved times here in America, here in Austin, and, back in Trinidad, but we were put against each other, right? The Black men were Mandingos. They fought each other to the death for the master's pleasure and his company. And the women, they were the master's pleasure, and whoever, they have to fight each other for that position. So we've always been taught to fight each other as a people versus learn and I want to say this with the utmost respect, because I am also this, but as African-American people, we have been taught, and I am an African-American. I was born and raised. Even first gen, that is who I am.
That's still where you are.
I am, I just have seen some other things for me to know that there's something different coming for Austin and beyond. You know what I'm saying?
When would you say you noticed the gap between the history and how it was being told to us? Because you've highlighted a couple of different instances of history that I didn't even know, right? And then you've highlighted instances of history.
Those are small in scale, but those instances.
See?
Yeah.
And you kind of hinted at that, because you talked about how while doing this book, you ended up coming across so many large discoveries, right? So at what point did you realize that there was a gap between the history that was being told about Black Austin and what was actually the history of Black Austin?
I knew that. I found that out just a few years ago myself, you always knew growing up that something wasn't right about how it was moving in Austin. You know what I'm saying? And that's in fact kind of how I started doing this work. I'm grateful to be from Austin, so I do. So the Black Leaders Collective so really, I've always done community service work because my mother, she is a servant. She's an activist. My mom used to do more on the global scale and bringing it to Austin. I remember when there was the Rwanda genocide back in the 90s, and she was the one leading those efforts. I don't know if we remember those times, but about them fighting each other. And anyway, bottom line is she used to run point for those types of things here, and as an activist. And, fundraiser and trying to help, gain resources for those causes. And I remember the Rodney King movement. She was on the front line of that. I remember watching my mom on the TV and be like, oh my God, that's my mom leading the march. They were being like, what the fuck? That was my mother,
Black excellence.
Excellence and just strong and just from Trinidad and just raw and out here on her own tough, the toughest woman I've ever known in my entire life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Something bad. You know what I mean? Real bad, and so, but that was always, as she gave from her heart. Sometimes we rarely ever had anything, but one, she knew how to whip it up, and two, she knew how to give it to somebody else. Somebody was always living with us or getting, helping. She was always helping wherever she could.
How bad y'all was doing somebody else.
Somebody else to
still
and
use
if it wasn't that person, it was a dog. Like, why do we all fight about the dog?
Has something.
The dog.
Somebody or some animal or something. We think
you don't have enough room for this dog. You know what I'm saying?
You think you were that young when you began to see that gap between you saw your mom already fighting, and then you're like, wait, but why does it seem like back home, we don't seem to recognize the fight
and the fight. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a real struggle. But she, did what she could. We made ends meet the best that we could. But that's who we are to the core as a people, as I think people that love really strong and give where we can, and also know, that if you don't want our love, we can also just move around politely.
We get that background.
I'm happy to go to the left or the right, whichever way you like, to the left or the left. I don't know.
Right now, I don't mind that. So let's talk about the book. So your daughter, Alien, bought the book, right?
Yeah.
So what do you want her generation specifically to take away from it?
My daughter. So yes, my daughter inspired the book. I made the book at a time where my daughter was like 1 or 2 years old. It was around that time frame. We were reading books about global figures, and I knew that we needed to like really highlight. We were reading about the Obamas and the Oprahs of the world, but we really need to highlight what was going on in our city, and for us to know that there was real legacy right here. A.Z. Taylor Morton, that still is the only Black female that's signature is on on the American dollar, because it was the only Black female U.S. treasurer. She went to HT, and she, what I'm saying, like, up in Austin.
Shout out to HT.
In Austin, died in Austin. You know what I mean? So shout out to HT.
I didn't know that.
First and only Black female U.S. Secretary of State under the Jimmy Carter administration. Absolutely. Only Black female thoughts. We never got Harriet Tubman. We definitely got.
We got a Black signature on there. Yeah.
And her, she has signs in Austin, with her name on it. But we, as Austinites, did not know that level. Willie Welch also went to HT. He was bigger than Jackie Robinson at the time. Willie Welch, they used to call him the devil. That was his name. He was in the baseball, all Black African, or Negro Hall of Fame, and all of those things. Better than, or in competition. I shouldn't say better than, but they were in the same caliber of, and he was right out of Austin. You know what I'm saying? Highest level of Black baseball at the time, or then you name it. There was real wealth and beauty, and
there was already people back then bridging the gap.
Absolutely, we built this city, and that's why it's called the city.
We built the bridge, and then they created the gap.
And then the gap actually really did come when they created it, because segregation came and it knocked down our number one high school, which was L.C. Anderson High School. We were then buzzed over to another part. But that was, I think, the downfall of. And then UT came also. Houston Tillotson is our first standing higher education.
Really?
Institution, absolutely, first standing. They came before UT, and HBCU did.
Wow.
Yeah. You can just easily look at the years. I don't call them, but I do know HT is celebrating 150. Shout out to HT on 150th. But UT was established a little after that. And when that happened too, it did create a level of divide between, because HT really was the pipeline to Black excellence. About 20 of the 26 characters from my book either went to HT, or their children went to HT, or they taught at HT. They had some affiliation.
Some type of affiliation with Johnson.
Yeah.
So if you had to describe Austin's Black communities in the 80s and 90s compared to where it is today, how would you paint that?
Well, the 90s. So we were around for the 90s. So you could, vouch for East Austin in the 90s.
Man, yeah.
East Austin in the 90s.
That we were.
The East Austin in the 90s. The 90s, we had just really, the later 90s was when, the millennium came for the first time. And we were skating and dancing and having a good time. We had
Like a perpetual barbecue.
yeah, all the time. And we had, we always had Juneteenth, which really just set the summer off all the time. That was just what you did at the park at Gibbons.
Jump on the events.
We had Bartholomew.
Yeah.
We used to go down.